Hello. I have a strand of these GE 150 LED miniature lights, which are supposed to be the so-called constant on. Here's the specs. I was able to find another strand of these this year, just like last year. They were $40 though. Quite expensive compared to a lot of the other ones, but these are pretty good quality. However, they have their limitations, and I will show you this strand that I currently have finally lit up all the way. I have been struggling with for days because I used it for one season out on my sort of backyard evergreen tree. It's kind of like a Christmas tree. I wrapped this strand around it, let it run all winter season. But what I didn't know was that even though these say that they're indoor-outdoor rated, if you look in here on the back side of these housings for the bulbs, they are not waterproof. So I believe what happened to my strand was that about 10 or more bulbs burned out because of water intrusion into the sockets. So I plugged it in this year, ready to, wire them up and put them on the tree, and the entire thing was out. And I said, wait a second, it's supposed to work even if some of the bulbs are out. Well, that's because I didn't know that this is how they're wired together. It took some time figuring this out. You have two of the LEDs in parallel, and then series to another two parallel LEDs, and that goes 75 times, and this is 150 LEDs. So they do 2 times 75 in series, and that's what gives you the 150. So there's these two different versions. This is just like a basic circuit diagram, but then this is how they actually connect them together. Okay. I also, at first, I thought that, there's probably something wrong with the plug. There's a DC converter inside the male plug. So there's, just for your hopeful benefit, there's a capacitor, 1.6 microfarads. Resistor here, I was measuring about 104 kilo ohms. And a resistor here, I measured about 218 ohms. There's a diode here that I don't know anything about diodes, so I can't tell you what the specs are on that. But I can tell you that this was the ground, this was for the DC, and this was for the AC pass-through. And those were bullet connectors, all right? Now, I had initially said that this was DC out and thought maybe it was 4 volts. That is completely wrong. Based off of my measurements today, my testing today, I think that this is actually DC in. So I think that it sends the AC pass-through all the way out to the end of the this thing here, and then loops it back, and then basically this has a negative DC signal to send the current DC through this. So at first, yeah, I was thinking that it was positive on this out here. I think now that it's negative. And it also agrees with what I found with the wiring, because since I figured out this is how it's wired up, I went and I looked at the way that it was wired, and it turned out that it was backwards compared to what I thought it was. So that's why I think the AC pass-through comes through, and then it sends the link back to these LEDs, and it converts it actually on the back end instead of the front end. So all that said, let me try to get back on track here. I called customer support. They were absolutely no help because customer support took me through the basic stuff of like, did you replace the bulbs or replace the fuses? Yes. I tried to replace the fuses. I actually went and bought this. By the way, this was only $2.50 at Lowe's. So if you need replacement fuses, if that's your issue, then these are right now readily available for very cheap. They said, did you check that all of the bulbs are fully seated in their sockets? Yes, every bulb is fully seated in their socket. This was back when nothing was coming on. And they're like, oh, you just have to send it in. And they told me to send it in to, you know, it's somewhere on here. Yeah, St. Nick's Fix, 246 Spring Hill Road, blah, blah, blah. They told me to just send it in. I'm like, look, they're probably going to just throw the thing away. And I don't want them to do that. And I'm also kind of stubborn. So I want to try to fix this thing. I want to figure out what's wrong with it. So I literally started from the male end. I literally started popping out every bulb and testing it. And the way that I tested it, I used this really sketchy battery setup. So I can't remember if this bulb is good or not, but positive this side, negative this side. The side with the notch on these is the positive side. It's the lower little hook there. The higher hook is the negative. And basically you touch positive to positive side and negative to negative side. And if it lights up, then it's working. But that doesn't ensure that it will completely, it's not a 100% test to know whether or not it will actually work in this circuit. Like I said, I had, or maybe I can't remember if I said it. I've recorded this same video multiple times. It's been a real pain in the butt. Basically, what happened was I went through, while the whole thing wasn't working, I sat there, went through one by one, as the whole thing was out, pulled out every single LED, tested it with my little sketchy battery setup, and then plugged it back in if it worked. And I got it down after replacing 3 bulbs. It turned out that the rest of the thing lit up except for the bad bulbs. And that's when I started figuring out that they were set up in this sort of configuration. So if you have 2 adjacent bulbs that go out, the whole thing won't work. So the whole constant on thing is half true. It's half true. If you have 2 adjacent bulbs go out and they disconnect the rest of the circuit, the whole thing will go out. If they're on the parallel together. Because like I said, you've got sets of parallel, like these two. There's 4 wires between the 2 of these. Those are in parallel. And then there's only 3 wires between these 2. That means this is going to series for the next parallel set. All right, so I figured all that out, but I still could not figure out what was going on with these last 3, okay? I replaced all the bad bulbs and then plugged it back in again, checked everything, you know, triple checking, and I found that I still had 3 bad bulbs. So I tried to replace them again. Nothing. That's when I discovered, and let me see if I can find one of them. This is one of them right here. One of these parallel sets, these 2 are in parallel, okay? These 2 blue ones. It originally had this amber one in this socket. Whenever I plugged this amber bulb into that socket, this one went out. And it was the same issue with one of these right here. I think it was this one. I can't remember if it was that one or that one. But This one was amber. If I plugged that one in, the other one went out. When I took it out, the other one came back on. I'm like, that's really weird. And also, there was one more. It was somewhere, I can't remember where it was exactly. I want to say it was this one. This one right here. I think that one was a problem one. But basically, there's one down here. So, after blue is supposed to be amber. So we got red, green, violet, or purple, whatever. And then blue, and then that one's supposed to be amber. But guess what? Same issue. I had to switch around the bulbs. See, we got blue, purple, or whatever, and then blue again. That's because I had to take one of these, guess what? Amber bulbs out. 3 amber bulbs causing the problem. I don't know what it is, but these, for some reason, these amber ones, same thing. You plug them in, it kills the other bulb. So I actually moved, let's see here. Which one was it? Blue. Okay, so right here, this was supposed to be the amber one. I moved like all of them over. Moved all of them over so that instead of having amber here, it just goes straight back to the red, green, magenta or whatever, violet. So red, green, and then that one I replaced violet, blue back again, like their magenta blue. Okay, so basically, for some reason, these amber bulbs in 3 situations would not work. And I can't explain why. I'm sorry, guys, I can't explain why. I don't know what it is. But for some reason, those bulbs were turning out the adjacent one that was in parallel. So there must be something wrong with those bulbs. And you'll see, like, I don't know if you can notice it, but some of these amber bulbs are burning super bright, and some of them are like somewhat weak. So there's a massive difference in what power usage they're taking up. So I think there's like a very massive difference in the stats of these amber bulbs, and they're causing disruptions in the whole system. But also keep in mind, like I said, I think some of this happened because I used it outdoors, even though it's supposed to be rated for outdoors. And I think that water got inside these fittings, inside these housings. And I think that screwed up like 10 bulbs. And that caused a massive world of headache.